Hi, my name is Nicole Tyler, and I am a senior studying creative writing here at Westminster. And for the last semester, I've had this really great opportunity of being in a directed study that I was able to organize and create with some guidance and help from my professor and mentor, Lance Newman. It's been really great. And the entire point of the study was to do an exploration of self and identity through spoken word and performance poetry. For the entirety of the study in the last 14 weeks, we have read books, I've written poems, and we've done revisions. It's been a really collaborative process. However, we haven't done a whole lot of the performance aspect, which is really important to me as a slam poet. And so I've decided, in lieu of a written portfolio, we're going to do a video portfolio that kind of gives you a chance to highlight and see some of my pieces, the growth and work that I've done, as well as a little bit of reflective capabilities, which is why my lovely friend Melissa is here, because she's going to help interview me. So, yeah. Thank you.
Welcome to Nicole's Final. All right, let's get started. So background. What is your experience with slam?
So, I've been doing slam going on, I guess this is my 4th year. I started it officially in freshman year. However, my interest in it has been for a long time. I remember specifically in high school, that's when I found button poetry. I think my junior or senior year. And a friend and I would just send each other videos because they would do their video of the day kind of a deal. And I was always like, that's so cool. But I never really knew what it was past that. I was just like, I really like these videos. And I like what the content that's being presented to me is. So
what, because you wrote poetry in high school. So did you start writing poetry after button? And after your experience with slam, or how did that translate from writing on the page to going and performing on the stage?
So, no, actually, I started writing poetry. I don't really have a timeline of when, but I do have I have a very vivid memory of middle school. My 7th grade English class had a poetry unit, and it was my shit. I was on top of it. I remember I wrote a really weird, we had to do odes, and we had to do sonnets, and we had to do very specific form poetry that definitely isn't things that I really do now, but at the time it's what I kind of started doing. And I just remember having one of my poems from that was picked, and it was about love or something like that. It was really random. It wasn't super good. But my teacher at the time was this is got potential, and I'd love to see you expand on it. And I was okay, maybe, who knows. Finished middle school, nothing really came of it. And then I went into high school, and I had a professor, teacher, oh my gosh, I get those mixed up now, because college. But I had a teacher, Miss Nelson, who was phenomenal. She was great. And she had us do a poetry unit. And she introduced us to poetry in a way that was very tangible and accessible to us as I guess little me, so a millennial, really into rap and hip hop. We did an entire poem after Tupac's "Me Against the World," where we wrote our own me against whatever, right, and what that looked like for us. And it was kind of the first time I explored self-exploration through poetry in a way that wasn't confined by some bound.
Okay.
And then it just kind of grew from there. And then my senior year of high school, I took a creative writing class. And the second half of the semester, my teacher basically was just yeah, I don't want to grade anyone's stuff anymore. So y'all are going to do a portfolio at the end of the semester. You're basically going to work on whatever you want this entire semester, free reign. But at the end of the semester, you have to turn in a document that is going to be worthy of a grade for the entire semester. So I hope you do something wisely. And me, being the angsty teenager that I was, had just gotten out of a relationship, was still processing the breakup because love or whatever. And I was yeah, I'm a creative writer and a poet and stuff, so let me write this 11-page, like, portfolio of poems outlining my life from like 6th grade right up until that moment, which was like just several weeks after like processing of a breakup. And I found myself really like delving into like personal topics I didn't think I would like talk about. And I turned it in, and I remember thinking to myself, this is going to go one of two ways. She's going to love it, or she's going to be like, this person needs some help.
She being your teacher.
Yes, she being my teacher is going to say, this person needs some help. And I was so terrified. And then we had to do a cover page, right? We had to do a cover page to, like, explain why we put everything in there. And so mine, you know, just was like, this is what this poem does for me, and, like, this is what this is about, like, why I did, like, kind of what my inspiration was. And this teacher she was, like, like, she had, like, multiple colored pens that she would mark your stuff with, because, like, every color meant something different. And so I was so prepared the day we got our finals back that she was just going to be like, I mean, this was good, but you could have fixed X, Y, Z and all of this stuff. And I got my final back, and she literally had only written on the cover page and said, I'm not going to write on this anytime soon because I don't want to ruin something that potentially could be published.
Oh, wow.
And this is, like, amazing and beautiful, and, like, thank you for sharing, and, like, you have a career in this. Like, don't give up on this right now. Like, do it. And that was a really interesting experience for me. And shortly thereafter, I came to a admitted student stay here at Westminster. I met the founder of Westminster Slam, Willie Palomo, and he invited me to come back to, like, a day where he and some other people were running a poetry workshop. And he told me, like, he thought that Westminster Slam would be the perfect fit for me, and that if I had chosen to go to Westminster, that following fall, like, I would fit right in, there would be no question. And he just told me to find him after orientation, because he was so committed to me going here and, like, having a successful place on this campus. So, yeah.
And so, since the first portfolio, you're now working on your portfolio, your final portfolio. What has been your goal with this particular portfolio and directed study?
Yeah, so this particular directed study, no lies, like, selfishly, it was like a, Nicole, you've got to graduate, and, like, you have to do a thesis. Maybe you should figure out, like, what that's supposed to look like. And I knew I was going to do creative writing thesis, and I guess my end goal is to be able to walk out of my thesis and feel like I have work that is close to being a manuscript, if not completely one, or things that I'm proud of that I would like to one day put into a manuscript, because my goal is within a year of graduating, I want to be able to have, like, my first official manuscript out there, potentially having some publishings, having some other things like that, because it just sounds like that just seems like the next logical step for me.
So you wanted to walk away from this directed study with something in your hand.
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect.
And part of that meant for me kind of figuring out more about who I was. So I have 2 chapbooks, one of which I created during this directed study from most of the work I've created in this directed study, and that was really cool. And the other one was just something I put together after I happenstancely ended up being a representative, going to WALPS, going to iWebs, needing something that was like, this is who Tanisha Nicole is, like, by their work. And so it was just kind of this, like, haphazard book about, like, my identity, and it's called Black and Blooming. And the first one is called Black and Blooming, and I really, even though it was, like, haphazard, I really love it. Like, there's just something about having something so raw, just, like, for me. And part of that experience was really, like, figuring out what my identity was, what it meant for me to be a poet. And in doing all of that, I realized that, like, a book wasn't enough. And so it was like, concept. What if you spend an entire semester, like, putting yourself through, like, the lens of other people and figuring out how you relate to it, and then, like, replicating that. And so that's kind of what started this directed study, was I wanted to continue to explore myself and identity through slam. I'd become acquainted with a lot of poets. I'd become acquainted with like work that I really liked, and I took this as an opportunity to buy all of the books that had been sitting on my wish list on Amazon and to really dig into them. By the process of, reading something every week, I then obviously had to sit with that, which was weird and really hard. But some of the most amazing and rewarding things that I've done. And that's kind of why I selfishly wanted to do it. And Lance was just weirdly nice enough to say yes when he didn't know me. And I came into his office and I was like, someone told me to go to you, and will you please? Thanks. Like, I'm trying to graduate.
So you already touched on why or the goal of what the material was, what you wanted that material to look like. So what did you end up choosing? And what poems or collections from those materials helped influence your current writing or throughout this study?
For sure. So, we had 14 books. I will try and go in chronological order. I'm not sure if I'll get all of them, but we'll figure it out. Okay. So, Dinesh Smith, Insert Boy. Sam Sachs, A Guide to Undressing Your Monsters. Blythe Baird, Give Me a God I Can Relate To. Rachel McKibben's Pink Elephants. Rachel Wiley, Fat Girl Finishing School. Bill Moran, Oh God, Get Out, Get Out. Hanif Willis Abdurraqib, The Crown Ain't Worth Much. And from those, I think, honestly, all of them, I felt like challenged me. I felt like all of them influenced me in some way. This semester was a lot of poems that I wrote, after so-and-so, or using a concept that somebody had given. Some really good examples would be I wrote, after Rachel Wiley, A Love Letter to My Body, inked. After Blythe Baird, The Kindest Thing She Almost, cross out almost, did, and Body Forgive Me, both of those after Blythe. I wrote a couple poems after Dinesh Smith, the most intriguing one being The Difference Between My Mother and My Body. While I found myself not necessarily writing directly after some of them, I found myself taking the themes that I really liked from them. Major themes that I really found really important were honesty, being vulnerable and raw, conversations of identity in ways that felt not so much nuanced, but something different, but also accessible. Conversational tone. I feel like a lot of my books had conversational tones. Mercedes Holtree, My Blood is Beautiful, we read her, and that entire book was just all about this encompassing feeling of what it is to exist as a woman of color, specifically Chicanx woman, and what those trials and tribulations look like, while also still just being so true to who she is as a person. She has a poem that we would call it, it's so meta, it's the poem for the poet instead of for the audience, and she references her ability to even be able to write the poem, right, and as an act of resistance and as an act of survival, which I thought was so cool.
So what is the common intersection with most of these texts? You talk about identity.
Yeah, so in terms of identity for me, most of them, I was very particular about handpicking out this selection of books. Everybody in the selection relates to my identity in some way, specifically making me address issues of race, sexuality, body, gender, mental health, socio-political, things that are happening, climate-wise, socioeconomic status, and also interpersonal relationships, as well as my own relationship with all of those things and how I exist within those spaces. So that's kind of I very purposely picked, and I wanted to make sure we read mostly women of color or people of color and people who had I didn't want only artists that would be similar to me, completely, but I wanted them to have differences that were going to be notable and influential on me, in a way that felt like, worth the investment, I guess.
In a way that you could still relate to them.
Yes, in a way I could relate to them without necessarily being like, oh, that's my story too, right? But also, like, ways that, like, made me push what I understood my story to be, and what I understood working on the page to be, and, like, what I understood poetry to be in general.
Okay, so you talk about pushing that, and you talked about the influence that they had. So, what did that look like in your poems? What was the change, or what did that process look like? How has your poetry changed since reading this material and throughout the semester?
So, number one answer is, and Lance can attest to this, I used to overwrite the shit out of everything. Like, I just remember, like, coming in, there was 1 week, I don't even remember what it was, but, like, it was my #MeToo poem. It was like, I came in, I was like feeling really good because I was like, oh my god, I just wrote this poem. It's like super fresh, super relevant. And I just remember Lance being like, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna give you feedback and, like, I'll send it to you, like, or, like, give it to you next week or something. And it was like, cool, yeah, you do that. And I just remember getting the fax, like, the message back, and he was like, really great work, like, all of these things, see my comments below, and, like, they were attached. Opened this file, and the entire document just had, like, marks all over it. Like, half of the poem was crossed out. And it wasn't bad. He was just like, you don't need this. Like, this is tight. Like, this is cool. This is really great. And, like, it was kind of this idea of, like,
how to keep it conversational.
Yeah, keeping it conversational, keeping it accessible, and also, like, that weird moment where I was like, oh, I'm writing for the page, not for slam. Like, that's okay. And so, like, for that transformation to happen was really interesting. Like, there was never any time, like, Lance was, like, so good at giving feedback because I never, like, disagreed with anything. I was just like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Like, how did I not see that before? And I think there was a period of time where I'm sure that he was like, do they actually look at my feedback? Because they're doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, I'm this, like, person that, like, I really like to break the rules or push them as far as I possibly can. And so I was like, okay, I know he said not to, but what if? Right? And, like, sometimes it worked. It worked sometimes, other times it didn't, and that's okay. But then these last couple of weeks, or I guess really since about the time we read Rachel Wiley, I made it, like, a conscious goal to start being more aware of how many, like, syllables and how many, like, letters, and, like, just how much I was taking up on the page, with the idea of, instead of it being, like, long this way, letting it be long this way, right? And so, like, what, like, cutting and breaking, like, breaking lines to cause more tension, or to kind of, I love when I can do, like, double entendre or, like, double meanings happening when you, like, break at a certain part and then, like, it's still, like they relate both texts. And so, like, that's been a big one. And then I think the other one was just really kind of, like, becoming more aware of how I'm using the page and what I'm doing on the page, because I think that I got really comfortable with the idea of just writing and not caring, because, like, in slam, I don't necessarily punctuate the way that you typically use punctuation. I punctuate the way, like, punctuation for me equals performance. That totally, like, just changes everything. Like, a comma isn't actually a comma. Like, a comma is a breath in a place that makes no sense to breathe, but it does when you're performing, and you have to keep stamina going, and you have to, like, build that tension that way, versus, like, on the line, when you're, like, able to create that tension by, like, breaking, but not breaking enough to the point where it would be, like, everything lost.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
All right. So, moving forward, what is your goal?
So I think that moving forward, I mean, obviously, I think the big goal is to be published. Manuscript, have something that I can hold in my hand and say, I created this from, like, start to finish. And, you know, like, I like, acknowledge the fact I'm pretty lucky. I'm 21 and I've got a handful of publications already, right? Like, I've already been published by, like, some pretty big name people. And
Phoenix.
Yeah, so, like, Button Poetry, right about now, is forthcoming with another one. Voicemail Poems, Peculiar picked me up. Like, all of these places they know are, you know, it's, like, not exactly the easiest to get into. I have a TED Talk, right? Like, going to WOWPs and placing in the top 10 really opened a lot of doors for me. And I really just want to make sure that they utilize that networking in that space. And I really want to really start exploring like what that could look like in terms of like putting work out there that's accessible and digestible for an audience, especially coming from such a unique background that I come from, as a like queer, non-binary person of color living in the state of Utah, formerly Mormon, no longer, all of these things, and like, I mean, mentally ill, and like a survivor of sexual assault, like all of these, like just add them all up. Like there's so many things there and so many perspectives that I feel like I can bring to the table. And I also believe like it to be like an act of resistance to publish a narrative that like otherwise has been told like in institutions of whiteness and systematic oppression that doesn't belong there. And so like I think my goal is like moving forward is to be like LOLJK, look at me belonging. And that's kind of
and creating space.
Yes, creating space, holding space, making that space accessible to others, and really living in it, like not allowing myself to just like take up space for a minute and then kind of leave, right? Like I want to be able to put something out there and say like, this is, look at me taking up space for like 50 pages, and have like it feel like every part of those 50 pages was relevant, and that every part of what I have to say deserves to be heard, not once, but twice, or however many times someone, goes back and reads, because I can only imagine, for me, the feeling of success is going to be that moment that I had with every single book that I read, where I like read something and I was like, oh my God, I need to read that again. I need to read that again. And I can only hope that I can do the same thing for a generation of people that are presently and forthcoming, and who knows how long it'll be. But I really do want to create something that is my like little piece of like legacy left behind. But also like, hey, 4 years of undergrad can do a lot. And this is kind of what my 4 years did.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you for letting me interview you. Thank you for putting up with my head nodding and silence. But yeah.
Cool. Hey, Lance. So I figured that the performance aspect of this course is just as important as the writing. I put together a book out of most of the poems that we came up with together, or that you advised me on. Either way, it felt like a group effort, so like you're going to be captain on that. And this is kind of an overview of the book in terms of like the 4 poems I think really kind of showcase what's going on in the book. So we've got the opening poem, which is about healing. Then we've got Metamorphosis, which was the first poem I turned in. Love Letter, Inked, which is the one I did after Rachel Wiley, which is where I kind of first started playing with like form, and it was extremely different than what I had done. And then we have my closing poem, which is on healing for real this time. So you kind of have an overarching theme of things that are happening, how I interacted with it. And yeah, so here are some performances. I'm not memorized, and that's okay, because it's a poetry slam, not a memorization slam. An attempt at healing in 9 parts, after Denez Smith. 1. I slammed goodbye so hard the door is no longer on its hinges. Vodka bottles break to fill the silence. The destruction doesn't seem so loud when quieted with a chaser. I pour myself into her, a vessel to hold me for the night that is, until we are both empty promises with nothing left of ourselves to give. So she leaves, and I shatter. 2. When sweeping what remains of my glass heart, I always save the largest shard for safekeeping. A reminder to not drop my guard so quickly again. The night I drop the shard into my skin and draw crimson will mirror the morning I've buried, but's only present when the trauma needs a reason to keep me in bed. And I will stay here, lying, so still. 3. It's 4:17 a.m. some Monday in July. I'm sharing a bed with a man I met less than 3 hours ago, a stranger I thought could fix all this broken over a girl who couldn't love me the way I should be loving myself. 4. I've never done this before. 5. By this I of course mean I've never compensated my sadness with a man before. 6. We finished the conversation without words, only taking cues from the other's body language, carrying out dialogues for hours, though I do not believe they spoke in the same tongues. 7. After I went down on him, he didn't return the favor, only pushed me back and proceeded to thrust till he got off. Inside me, 8. It is the first time my body hurts like this. Cries when I move it too quickly. You'd think I'd learned by now that sex always leaves me more dead inside. The kind that leaves me vulnerable and bleeding. 9. When the self-medicating fails to work, again, just as I knew it would, I will reach for the other bottle. I will reach for the one prescribed for bad days. I will reach for it in the same way I reach for the lover or the glass. It too will be sacred. I will chase with water. This time, the burning won't be from vodka. I will call this good enough. Call it healing. Call it alive. Recently, I've wanted to unbecome myself like a butterfly turns caterpillar. Something about reversing this life cycle feels like it could be more clean, less mess, less suicidal thoughts, more intentional actions. I draw monarchs on my wrists to prevent my veins from blooming carnation over everything I love, or once did, when I could feel more than this. Fact. For a butterfly to form, the caterpillar must first digest itself, leaving only the spinal cord to metamorphosis. In essence, the caterpillar will suffocate in order to let the butterfly inside breathe. Once, I tried to replicate the process of chrysalis, but my best friend came and ripped open this too small of a cocoon too early and told me I couldn't live like this anymore, said there was nothing worth dying for on the outside, and I think she was expecting to find a butterfly ready to live among the flowers. And in a way, she was right. Because I oftentimes want to share a bed with roses rooted so deeply we are both 6 feet under, and I am the only thing that can push them through an impossible winter. But I have never been able to survive the winter without dying a little each night and waking up frozen over like so many flowers that thought they could hold out through ice and cold for sun and warmth. The only difference is I somehow managed to thaw, and enough of me is still alive, despite all odds, and I can start over. And maybe that's all I really want, to start over, unbecome, backwards butterfly myself, and try again, no longer monarch, but chrysalis digesting the worst parts of me so the rest can live beautifully. But there is nothing beautiful about the way I fantasize killing off the parts of myself I find ugly, and hiding the scars under my not wings. No spin will make it any more romantic, only more real. And if we call this destruction real, we have to acknowledge the damage I've already done. And that's more time than we have, because winter is here, and all of the other caterpillars are already wrapping themselves up in silk to keep warm before breaking down the most toxic parts, and I so badly want to join them. Maybe I'll be the rare one who doesn't quite turn out to be butterfly, but is no longer caterpillar either. And you can all see, as I bleed out, what's underneath all this silk. Love letter to my body, inked, after Rachel Wiley. Dear body, I scarred you again, and this time I smiled when I saw myself naked in the mirror, reflecting color and script, and this was the first time I saw this much body as canvas for my own creations. Funny how when I pay someone else to do the scarring, we call it art. And goddamn, are we going to make a fucking masterpiece, something I actually want to look at and never break open again. And oh body, I hope you accept my apology for splitting skin by covering self-inflicted wounds with ones that will heal, that I want people to see. These 12 works of art on you are more than an investment. They are proof of every time I have chosen to stay. On healing, for real this time. after Lydia Havens and Bill Moran. Bless every place I have learned to reinvent the ways I love myself. Bless every Torrid and Target and Ross for being gentle on days I only want to hurt. Bless all of the people who have let me hurt and still loved me in the morning. Bless every time I put myself before a razor that stopped before breaking skin. Bless every tattoo shop sanctuary that has turned my need to break skin into masterpiece. Bless Lucky 13 and Cathedral and Defining Ink and SLC Ink and All Wolves No Sheep and all the shops and cities I've been to only once. Bless the state of Minnesota, even in the winter. Bless that 1,300 miles away was enough of a difference to mean my best friend is still on the other end of the phone when I call. Bless every friend turned therapist. Bless Rye and Cozy and Mariella and Melissa and Viv and Daisy and CJ and Carissa, and how when my problems are too big, they tell me to go to Rachel, my actual therapist. Bless all of the unpaid emotional labor they do anyway. Bless Rachel for still doing sessions with me even when I don't have insurance. Bless the sessions that are working. Bless the poems for when they don't. Bless Watchtower Cafe and even Stevens for being home to the spaces I bring my emotional overflow. Bless Slam, even when I don't play to win. Bless the open mic and the courage it sees. Bless Dorothy and Anne and Jose and Bryce and Mama Deb and RJ and Harper and Carrie and Alexa and Jesse and Ashley and Ricky and Daisy and everyone who has helped me grow as a writer. Bless cats and how something so little has been enough to keep me alive. Bless that even after all this, I am still alive. Bless unconditional love even when I feel I don't deserve it. Bless every way I have been reminded I do deserve it. Bless every resident for investing in me the same ways I do in them. Bless Paige for always asking what my proudest accomplishment was until I had a better answer than staying alive. Bless the ways I have learned to thrive. Bless every workshop and free write and notebooks that hold secrets Rachel doesn't know yet. Bless that over the course of the year I have become who I am right now. Bless that I am not the same person everyone who's ever hurt me knew. Bless the work I've put into getting here even when I wanted to quit. Bless that my mama didn't raise no quitter. Bless the fight I've still got inside me underneath all the trauma. Bless every time I thought I'd found salvation but didn't quite have it right. Bless the ways I've grown instead. Bless this healing that's come in people and places and things. Bless the way it will continue to come if I let it. And oh, bless and bless and bless and bless. For the first time, I want to let it. Folio, I've decided that it's extremely important that I also include the members of Westminster Slam. Because without Westminster Slam, yes, y'all can wave. Yay! Thanks, Westminster Slam. Without Westminster Slam, I wouldn't have actually gotten to put any of the poems that I wrote into practice or application. They also were really helpful in giving me feedback, and I was able to take things I had learned from the course and offer it to them as prompts, so we could all learn and grow together as writers. We have the wonderful opportunity of being part of the Ignite conference that just happened this past couple weekends ago in Orem, where we were able to perform for approximately 2,000 people between in person as well as the live stream, and who knows how many times it's been seen since then. And this is the poem that we did. It's something that we are all extremely proud of. I know I can personally say I'm proud of every single one of the people who I'm standing next to who have helped with this entire process and growth. And this is from us to you.
A letter to our younger selves.
Or a queer kid's guide to surviving the holidays.
1. When your mom asks, are you really going to wear that outfit to the family dinner?
Tell her yes. Tell her this is the year your butch will not be wrapped up in red as femme.
Do not hide
your jewelry underneath your button-down. Let there be feminine there for them to grasp onto.
Tell her this is the season of lights and laughter.
And this year, we will be in on the joke instead of the punchline.
2. When everyone's reintroducing themselves to Grandma, take the opportunity to tell her your chosen name and pronouns.
Let them sit in her lap like you used to.
Even if she doesn't remember your name, she will always remember your smile.
Embrace the children too young to know you as anyone else.
Call
this the family reunion you actually wanted to go to.
3. When your at-the-time partner's mom gives you the ultimatum of telling your dad about the relationship or her doing it for you, do not let her push you out of the closet and into a corner. Tell her no one can make this decision for you. The right time for you isn't always going to be what's convenient for her, for there may never be a right time.
When your dad reads your relationship as straight, tells you he is so glad you're not gay, do not correct him.
There is no shame in safety. Remember to choose your battles wisely. Just because you are bi and pan and dating another gender does not invalidate who you are, does not mean that you are any less queer, any less valid, any less.
5. Once everyone's taken their seat at the family table and the inevitable questions of,
So how's school?
What are you going to do after you graduate?
Who are you dating?
come up, take a breath.
Don't flinch when you have to remind your parents for the third time this evening that your girlfriend is your girlfriend without the space. Bridge the gaps between her and them by offering both your hands.
6. When they see the new ink covering old scars and shoot looks of disapproval, remind them that your body is a temple, that religion is individual, and that in this holy place you are both the preacher and the congregation. Tell them there is no room for judgment, only new members, so long as they understand,
In this house, everyone is welcome.
7. If you are asked to say grace, think of all of the ways that you have been blessed.
Think of your first dance at queer prom.
sunburns from pride.
Holding your partner's hand in public for the first time.
Think of all of the memories that you have made with the family that you have chosen that will never flinch when it comes to your identity. Clasp everyone you've ever loved between your fingers and offer
Offer them salvation in place of prayer. Lead the choir in songs of survival.
8. Raise your voice for every time someone has tried to silence your truth.
Live in the light truth brings.
You don't have to walk in the same darkness.
That 34,000 queer youth do each year before losing their lives to suicide.
Winter may be a season of dying, but you have just begun to bloom.
You who will make it to Easter and every other season of growth.
9. We are not done growing. We will watch the snow melt and call it our baptisms.
We'll call ourselves gods.
Saints.
Heroes.
Warriors.
Humans.
Alive.
Call ourselves anything other than statistics. 10. When you leave the holiday party.
Say goodbye to ignorance and
And
hello to healing.
Surround yourself in the comfort of community.
They say blood is thicker than water. But no one said we had to be from the same bloodline to be considered family.
The shared experience coursing through our veins is enough to bring us together in ways that our families may never understand.
Our queer is thicker than the roots of any tree.
And we are just beginning to branch out into something that knows no limits or bounds. Something that is bigger than you or me.
It is us. Something that cannot be knocked down or destroyed. It is us.
We have just broken through the soil's surface so we can thrive for years to come.
It is us. And we are here to stay. Thank you.